Jake Carmichael had everything most men would dream of: wealth, power, and a luxurious lifestyle. But the one thing he lacked was real love. Women surrounded him, but they were always after his money or his status. The only genuine relationships he had were with his business partners and the people at the top. Loneliness consumed him, and he yearned for something real. One evening, as Jake sat in his penthouse staring at the skyline, he made a decision that would change his life forever. He would pretend to be a janitor in his own company. In doing so, he would find someone who truly cared for him, not for his wealth. He'd let the world see him as just another worker. He wasn't sure how this would play out, but he had nothing to lose. Jake knew that to pull off this disguise, he'd have to be convincing. The next day, he walked into the company building dressed in a worn janitor's uniform. The transformation was complete. No one recognized him. He was just John the janitor, blending in with the staff. As he pushed his cleaning cart through the halls, Jake found it strangely liberating. He was invisible, yet he had the power to observe everything. He overheard conversations that were usually hidden from the CEO's ears. However, one person caught his eye: Sophia Bennett, the company's HR manager. She was smart, humble, and most importantly, genuine. Unlike the others who fawned over his position, Sophia treated him with respect. But what intrigued Jake the most was that she was untouched by the usual corporate games. Jake's interest grew, but he knew he couldn't reveal himself to her just yet. As days passed, Jake found himself crossing paths with Sophia more often. She would occasionally offer him a friendly smile or ask how his day was going, and Jake appreciated it more than he cared to admit. But it wasn't just the kindness that intrigued him. It was her ability to connect with people in a genuine way, unlike anyone else in the building. One day, Sophia approached Jake while he was cleaning the break room. "Are you all right?" she asked, noticing he seemed a little off. "You look a bit tired." Jake, caught off guard, managed to say, "Just a long shift." Her concern touched him, and for the first time in a long while he felt seen, not as the CEO of Carmichael Enterprises, but as someone who was just trying to make it through the day. She smiled warmly at him before leaving, and Jake's heart fluttered. Jake couldn't deny his feelings anymore. Every time he saw Sophia, his heart raced. He began to find reasons to be near her, taking extra long breaks to clean the areas she frequented. He wasn't sure if it was her warmth, her genuine kindness, or the fact that she didn't treat him like a CEO, but he was falling for her. Sophia began confiding in him more, sharing personal stories about her life outside work. She told him about her family, the pressures of being a single woman in a high-stakes corporate environment, and her disappointment in relationships. Jake listened intently, captivated by her words, but he still couldn't bring himself to tell her who he really was. He feared that if she knew he was the CEO, she would only be interested in him for his money. He couldn't risk it. This connection felt too real. Jake's plan to find love was being tested. One evening, while cleaning near the executive offices, Jake overheard a conversation between Sophia and Paul, a senior executive. Paul's voice was smooth, almost charming as he flattered Sophia. But Jake could hear something darker in his tone, a sense of manipulation. Sophia had always spoken about trusting her colleagues, but this moment made Jake question everything. Was Paul using her to gain leverage at the company? He needed to know more. The next day, he tried to engage in a casual conversation with Sophia, but she was distant. She didn't seem as open as before, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Jake's fears were confirmed. He overheard Paul again, this time making direct advances towards Sophia. He could see the manipulation in Paul's eyes, and it made him angry. But Sophia was unaware of Paul's true intentions, which made Jake even more frustrated. One evening after work, Jake followed Sophia to her car. He wanted to tell her the truth about Paul and about himself, but before he could say anything, she spoke first. "I need to talk to you," she said. Her voice was soft, but the words were heavy. "I've been dating Paul, but I don't think I can trust him anymore. I feel like I've been used, and I don't know what to do." Jake's heart sank. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to comfort her, but at the same time he was terrified she would never forgive him for the lies he had told. That night, Jake made a decision. He couldn't keep pretending anymore. He needed to tell Sophia the truth, all of it. So the next day, he showed up at her office without his janitor's uniform, wearing his usual CEO attire. Sophia looked up in shock. "Jake, I need to be honest with you," he began, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "I've been pretending to be someone I'm not, and I can't hide it any longer. I'm not the janitor. I'm the CEO of Carmichael Enterprises." Sophia stared at him, shocked and confused. "Why would you do this?" Jake took a deep breath. "I didn't want you to love me for my money. I wanted to see if you would love me for me. The real me." Sophia was silent for a long moment. Her face was a mixture of anger, hurt, and something else Jake couldn't place. "You lied to me," she said quietly. "You lied to all of us." Sophia walked away from Jake, telling him she needed time to think. Jake didn't know if he would ever see her again. He had risked everything to find true love, only to betray her trust. His heart ached as he realized that he might have lost the one person he had ever truly cared about. Sophia, on the other hand, spent the night processing everything. She didn't know what to think. Jake had lied to her, but his feelings seemed so genuine. Could she ever trust him again? Could she move past the betrayal? Jake didn't give up. He sent flowers, messages, and even a handwritten letter to Sophia. He needed to prove that he was truly sorry. It took a week, but finally, Sophia responded. She agreed to meet him in person. "I can't say that I've forgiven you yet," Sophia said, her eyes still filled with uncertainty. "But I can see that you're genuine. I just need time to think." Jake nodded, relieved that there was still hope. They agreed to start over, this time with complete honesty between them. Sophia confronted Paul about his manipulation and his deceit. Paul, caught in the act, was fired from the company. He tried to spin the situation in his favor, but Sophia wasn't having it. For the first time in her life, she took control of her own destiny. She walked out of the office, leaving Paul behind, just as Jake had done with his lies. Together, they had both learned to stand up for themselves and face the truth. Sophia spent the next few days reflecting on everything that had happened. She had faced betrayal, manipulation, and heartbreak, but now she had to decide if she could forgive Jake and truly trust him. When Jake called her that evening, she didn't know what to expect. She had thought she might never speak to him again, but something in her heart told her that he deserved a chance. "I've been thinking about everything," Sophia said softly when they met later. "You hurt me, Jake, but I know you're trying. I'm not going to pretend that it's easy, but I want to try again, but with no more secrets. We need to be completely honest with each other from now on." Jake's face softened with relief. "I'll do anything to prove that I'm here for you, Sophia. I want us to build something real, something based on trust." And in that moment, the foundation of their relationship began to rebuild. They both knew it would take time, but for the first time, they both felt like they could truly start fresh. Jake and Sophia's relationship was slowly but surely being rebuilt. But it wasn't without its challenges. Sophia's trust in people had been broken too many times, and even with Jake's apology, she wasn't ready to fully open her heart to him just yet. They spent more time together, but each moment was a delicate dance. Sophia would catch herself thinking back to the lies Jake had told, and Jake could sense her hesitation. At work, things were also shifting. Carmichael Enterprises was recovering from the shockwaves of Paul's betrayal, and Jake had a new sense of urgency to turn the company around. But he found that the more he worked, the more distant Sophia seemed. One afternoon, Jake invited her to the office to discuss an important project, hoping to rekindle their connection. As they sat in his office, the conversation turned personal. "I need to know, Sophia," Jake said, his voice vulnerable. "Am I still someone you can trust?" Sophia's eyes softened as she met his gaze. "You're trying," she said, "and that's all I can ask for right now." Her words were a comfort to Jake, but the journey was far from over. The more they spent time together, the more Sophia's walls began to fall. But just when things were getting better, a new crisis emerged. Sophia's ex-boyfriend, who worked as a contractor for Carmichael Enterprises, began to create problems. He was still bitter about their breakup and used his position to try and sabotage Sophia's career. He leaked false information about her involvement in a company scandal, threatening to take legal action. The accusations were groundless, but they were enough to create doubts among the board members. Jake knew this was a test. Would Sophia crumble under the pressure, or would she stand her ground? Jake stood by her side, offering his support. But for the first time, Sophia was truly alone in her fight. She could no longer depend on Jake's wealth and power. She had to fight for herself. She stood up to her ex, making it clear that she wouldn't be bullied or manipulated again. The fight was fierce, but ultimately, Sophia won the battle, proving to herself that she could stand on her own. After the storm passed, the company emerged stronger. Sophia's career took off, and she gained the respect of her colleagues and the board. But more importantly, her relationship with Jake began to flourish. No longer confined by the expectations of others, Jake and Sophia began to build a life together, one based on trust, mutual respect, and authentic love. Their bond was no longer defined by secrets and lies. They were truly equal partners, not just in their careers but in their personal lives as well. One evening, after a successful board meeting, Jake took Sophia to their favorite restaurant. The moment was intimate, filled with laughter and love, and Jake realized that he had finally found what he was searching for: true love, free from the weight of his fortune. "I think we've both earned this," Jake said, looking into Sophia's eyes. "A life that's real." Sophia smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "We have." Months later, Jake and Sophia stood at the top of the company, both having earned the respect of their colleagues. But more importantly, they had found each other. The trust they had built was unshakable. Jake had learned that being true to yourself and honest in your relationships was the only way to truly find love. For Sophia, the journey wasn't just about career success. It was about embracing vulnerability, not just in love, but in life. On a warm evening, standing by the ocean, Jake turned to Sophia and asked, "Are you ready for the rest of our life together?" Sophia nodded, smiling. "I'm ready, we're ready." And with that, they walked into their new beginning, hand in hand, with nothing standing in their way. True love had triumphed over everything. Sophia and Jake had just begun to find their rhythm as a couple. Their relationship was growing stronger, and their professional lives were flourishing. But just when they thought they had everything under control, a new threat emerged, one they never saw coming. A new investor, Rebecca Harris, had recently taken a controlling stake in Carmichael Enterprises. She was a billionaire in her own right, a former tech mogul who had suffered a fall from grace. Rebecca had her own agenda, and she wasn't interested in Jake or Sophia's success. Instead, she saw weaknesses in their company, weaknesses that she was eager to exploit. Rebecca had a past with Jake, one that neither of them wanted to talk about. They had briefly dated years ago, and the relationship had ended in betrayal. Jake had broken her heart, and Rebecca had sworn to take him down if they ever crossed paths again. Now, with her newfound control over the company, she had the power to make Jake's life miserable once again. Sophia knew something was off about Rebecca from the moment she walked into the company. There was a coldness to her, and she could see the bitter animosity in her eyes whenever she looked at Jake. Sophia's suspicions grew when Rebecca started questioning their decisions and undermining their authority in board meetings. One night after a tense meeting, Jake finally came clean to Sophia about his past with Rebecca. He revealed that their relationship had been short-lived but intense, and that he had ended things in the most heartless way possible. He had fallen out of love with her, but she had never forgiven him for it. "I never wanted this to affect you, Sophia," Jake said, his voice filled with regret. "I thought it was over with Rebecca, but she's here to destroy everything I've built." Sophia was shocked. She had no idea that Jake's past was connected to someone so dangerous. But she also realized that this was a test of their love. Could they fight together against someone who had so much power over them? Rebecca's power in the company grew by the day. She began taking control of key projects, undermining Sophia's authority in HR, and even attempting to sway board members in her favor. Jake could feel his position slipping away, and every day he spent under Rebecca's manipulation, the more he began to question his own control over the company. But Sophia wasn't going to let Rebecca win. She had already fought one battle for her career, and she wasn't about to let Rebecca's power grab destroy everything she had worked for. With Jake's support, Sophia began to rally the employees and board members who were still loyal to her and Jake. She went to the media, leaking details of Rebecca's shady business deals in the past. The truth about Rebecca's fall from grace was finally exposed, and the company began to turn on her. But even as Sophia took the lead, the tension between her and Jake grew. He had broken her trust in the past, and she was still unsure whether she could truly rely on him. Just as Sophia began to gain the upper hand in the battle with Rebecca, she learned something that shook her to her core. Jake had secretly been in contact with Rebecca all along, trying to broker a deal behind Sophia's back. Jake had tried to play both sides, thinking he could save the company by making a secret deal with Rebecca, but his actions only made things worse. Sophia found out when she discovered a series of encrypted emails between Jake and Rebecca, discussing business moves that didn't align with her own values. Jake's betrayal was worse than anything she had imagined. He had manipulated her trust just like Paul had, and for a moment she wondered if she had made the wrong choice by ever forgiving him. Her heart broke as she realized that the man she had come to trust and love was still playing games with her emotions. Sophia confronted Jake, her eyes filled with tears and anger. "You told me you were done with games, Jake, but this is worse than anything Paul ever did. How could you betray me like this?" Jake looked defeated. "I never meant to hurt you, Sophia. I thought I could make things right, but I was wrong. I've been trying to protect the company in ways that destroyed us." Sophia was at a crossroads. She loved him, but the betrayal felt too much to bear. She had given him a second chance, and he had failed her once again. Could they fight together against someone who had so much power over them? "I need to know if I can trust you, Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't know if I can anymore." Jake didn't have an answer. This time, he couldn't fix things with words. He had to show her through his actions. Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, more than just Jake's mistakes. She began digging deeper into the company's history, and what she found shocked her. She uncovered financial discrepancies, hidden deals, and a history of questionable decisions made by Jake's business partners, including Rebecca. Sophia confronted Jake with the findings. "How much more have you kept from me?" she asked. "How deep does this go?" Jake was forced to open up about everything: the corruption, the manipulation, and the hidden deals he had been involved in. He told her how Rebecca had tried to control the company, and how he had been complicit in her schemes. Jake had thought he could fix things on his own, but instead, he had allowed everything to spiral out of control. Sophia finally made her decision. She couldn't erase the past, but she also couldn't ignore the future. She knew that if she wanted to move forward, she had to trust Jake again, and this time, it had to be based on honesty and complete transparency. Jake took full responsibility for his actions and promised to make things right. Together, they began the long road of rebuilding their relationship in the company, starting with trust. They didn't know what the future held, but they were willing to face it together. Sophia and Jake worked tirelessly to rebuild their company and their trust in each other. Slowly, they repaired the damage caused by their secrets and betrayal. Sophia stepped into her role as head of HR with confidence, while Jake took a more hands-off approach, letting her lead. Their relationship, once built on secrets, was now founded on honesty and shared goals. They had learned the hard way that love wasn't about control. It was about mutual respect. Together, they began to look toward the future, not as CEO and employee, but as a team, partners in business and in life. Years later, Carmichael Enterprises was thriving, and so was Jake and Sophia's relationship. They had weathered the storms of betrayal, manipulation, and deceit, and emerged stronger for it. Jake had learned that true love wasn't about wealth, power, or status. It was about being real and vulnerable with someone who loved you for who you were. Sophia had found her place in the company and in Jake's heart. Together, they had created a future built on authenticity and love, with no more secrets. Jake and Sophia stood before the board at the company's annual meeting. They had proven that their love was not based on money or status, but on trust and genuine connection. As they looked at each other, they knew that they had overcome the greatest challenge, trusting each other in a world of lies and manipulation. Together they were ready for whatever came next. No more games, no more secrets. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more life-touching stories. Maybe your 5 minutes of listening will change a life, possibly your own.